जय राधा माधव कुंज विहारी गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी।
जय राधा माधव कुंज विहारी गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी।
जय राधा माधव कुंज विहारी गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी।
जय राधा माधव कुंज विहारी गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी।
यशोदानंदन व्रज जन रंजन यमुना तीरवनचारी।
यशोदनंदन व्रज जन रंजन यमुना तीरवनचारी।
यशोदानंदन व्रज जन रंजन यमुना तीरवनचारी।
यशोदनंदन व्रज जन रंजन यमुना तीरवनचारी।
जय राधा माधव कुंज विहारी गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी।
जय राधा माधव कुंज विहारी गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी।
जय राधा माधव कुंज विहारी गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी।
जय राधा माधव कुंज विहारी गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी।
हरे कृष्णा हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे।
हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे।
हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे।
हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे।
निताई गौर हरि बोल हरि बोल निताई गौर हरि बोल।
निताय गौर हरि बोल निताय गौर हरि बोल।
जय जय प्रभुपाद श्रील प्रभुपाद जय जय।
प्रभुपाद श्रील प्रभुपाद।
जय जय श्रीपाद Shripad, Srila Shripad.
Jaya Jaya Shripad, 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 Srila Shripad.
Jai Jai Gurudev, 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 Srila Gurudev, Jai Jai.
Gurudev, 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 Srila Gurudev.
Nitai Gauranga Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Bolo Jai Jai Shri Radhe, Jai Jai Shri Radhe, Jai Jai Shri Radhe Shyam. Nitai Gauranga Bhagwan, Jai Jai Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udiraye Nashta Prayeshu Abhatreshu Nityam Bhagavat Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. Studying Srimad Bhagavatam is part of this Bhagavad Dharma. And we are in 6th canto, chapter 16. Text number today we will study 57. The Lord is speaking to King Chitraketu, Lord Sankarshan. Chapter entitled King Chitraketu Meets the Supreme Lord. Yade tad vismitam punso madbhavam bhinnamatmanah tatah sansara etasya dehaddeho mitermati. Translation purport by Divine Grace Abhay Charanal in the Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. When a living entity thinking himself different from me forgets his spiritual identity of qualitative oneness with me in eternity, knowledge and bliss, his material conditional life begins. His material, in other words, instead of identifying his interest with mine, he becomes interested in his bodily expansions, like his wife, children, and material possessions. In this way, by the influence of his actions, one body comes from another, and after one death, another death takes place. Purport. Generally, the Mayavadi philosophers or persons influenced by Mayavadi philosophers think themselves as good as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is the cause of their conditional life. As stated by the Vaishnava poet Jagadananda Pandit in his Prema Vivarta, Krishna Bahirmukha Hana Bhoga Vancha Kare Nikatasthe Maya Tare Jhapatiya Dhare. As soon as a living entity forgets his constitutional position and endeavors to become one with the Supreme, his conditional life begins. The conception that the Supreme Brahman and the living entity are equal, not only in quality, but also in quantity, is the cause of conditional life. If one forgets the difference between the Supreme Lord and the living entity, his conditional life begins. Conditional life means giving up one's body, giving up one body to accept another and undergoing death, to accept death again. The Mayavadi philosopher teaches the philosophy of Tattvamasi, saying you are the same as God. He forgets that Tattvam Asi applies in terms of the marginal position of the living entity, who is like a sunshine. There is heat and light in the sun, and there is heat and light in the sunshine. And thus, they are qualitatively one. But one should not forget that the sunshine rests on the sun. As the Lord says in Bhagavad Gita, Brahmano hi pratishtha, I am the original source of Brahman. The sunshine is important because of the presence of the sun glow. In this purport, in the translation, apparently many not so means, confusing in the sense that different aspects of this Achintya Veda are described. So we will discuss this today. The sunshine is important. See, this is very important. The sunshine is important because of the presence of the sun globe. It is not that the sun globe is important because of the all pervasiveness of the sunshine. Forgetfulness and misunderstanding of this fact is called Maya. Because of forgetfulness of one's constitutional position and that of the Supreme Lord, one comes into Maya or Sansara, conditional life. In this regard, Madhvacharya says, Sarva Bhinnam Paratmanam Vismaran Samsaret Iha Abhinnam Samsmaranam Yati Tamo Nastyatra Samshaya. When one thinks that the living entity is non-different in all respects from the Supreme Lord, there is no doubt that he is in ignorance, tamaya or maya. Om Ajnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Swarupa Damodar Swami Niti Namini Namah Sadbhakta Manaye Manipurudbhavaya Srila Prabhupada Lasadvani Prachara Niratayate Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Prada Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauratvishe Namah. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Shri Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Nam Sankirtanam Yasya Sarva Papa Pranasyanam Pranamo Dukkha Shamanas Tam Namami Harim Param. Pancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Vaishnavebhyo namo namah. See here the conditional life Srila Prabhupada is elaborately describing, and there are two aspects. See in the translation, when a living entity thinking himself different from me, when the living entity thinks himself different from me means independent. Here the different has to be understood in context of independence of the Lord. Because thinking himself different from me, forgets his spiritual identity of qualitative oneness with me in eternity. Interesting, correct? When the living entity thinking himself different from me, the Mayavadis don't think they are different from me. Rather, they emphasize the oneness, but to the wrong end. And those who are non-Mayavadis, they thinking themselves different or independent of the Lord, they are also in the conditional life. Forgets his spiritual identity of qualitative oneness with me in eternity, knowledge, and bliss. His material conditional life begins. In other words, instead of identifying his interest with mine, there is in the translation, and in the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes in the second pair, as soon as the living entity forgets his constitutional position and endeavors to become one with the Supreme. See here, when the living entity forgets his spiritual identity, then he becomes conditional. And here, as soon as the living entity forgets his endeavors to become one with, when one tries to become one with the Supreme, his conditional life begins. So in this way, it's a little confusing for those who are hearing in the beginning stage. But there are two aspects. That's why today we will describe the two aspects or causes or two kinds of conditional life. First, by the Mayavadis. By the Mayavadis, because due to their non-acknowledgement of what? Of the multiplicity. Non-acknowledgement of the multiplicity of the knowers. In the previous slokas, the Lord was describing He's the supreme knower of everything, and even the dream stage, living entity also knows. So there are multiple knowers. But the Mayavadis, because they do not acknowledge or deny the multiplicity of the knowers, and also what they deny? They deny the subordination of the living entity to the supreme soul. Two aspects which causes their conditional life. Denying or not acknowledging the multiplicity of the knowers, and denying and not acknowledging also the subordination of the living entity to the supreme soul who knows everything, who alone can know everything, compared to the possibility of knowing very little by the living entity. So they are ignoring the difference of the two. The Mayavadis, why they fall into conditional life? Because they ignore the difference of the two. They ignore the supreme position, exclusively supreme position of the Supreme Lord. That's why they are falling into conditional life. But those who are not Mayavadis, other materialists or other living entities, why they are in the conditional life? Due to their non-acknowledgement of their dependence. That's the first line of the translation. They are not Mayavadis, thinking there is one is supreme, the living entity is supreme. But here, although they are not claiming to be the supreme or anything, but they don't accept, they don't acknowledge their dependence on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They are thinking they are independent or different. So they are ignoring the oneness. Oneness means we are sheltered by the Supreme. We don't exist independently. Every iota of this existence which we experience or which we don't even experience, every iota of this existence, both matter and spirit, is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. Nothing can exist, nothing, absolutely nothing can exist on its own. Nothing can exist on its own without the support of the Supreme. Correct? So, those who ignore the difference of the Supreme Lord and oneself, then one falls into conditional category. And one who ignores the oneness Oneness in the sense that one cannot exist independent of the Lord. They also fall into the category of conditional life. So Mayavadis and non-Mayavadis, unless they accept dependence of Krishna, dependence on Krishna, they cannot come to the absolute platform. And this, the Lord is trying to describe the subject matter, especially the metaphor of this dreaming position, and comparing the dreaming position metaphorically with this material existence which we experience. So in experience, to some extent, it is like dream. Yesterday, we were wondering, some devotee asked the question where the dreaming is karma. Because dreaming is an activity, it is an experience, it is participation, consciously or unconsciously. That is also debatable. Even consciously, knowingly, unknowingly, if one touches a fire, fire will burn, correct? So touching the fire is a karma, it's an activity, it involves anything, with any action which causes reaction becomes karma. Of course, on the transcendental platform, the reaction is transcendental, it is very sublime, not binding to this material realm. Nonetheless, karma is there. That's why the karma is categorized into karma, akarma, vikarma, akarma, all these things. But the action is involved. Action we cannot deny in dreaming. Whether dreaming, so because it involves the gross or subtle, gross and subtle senses, and also feeling the reactions, correct? We feel the reactions in the dream. So metaphorically, we can call that the material existence is dream-like. It is not dream per se, because it is compared to a dream. The scriptures describe it is dream-like. So dream-like, so that this disadvantage or the faults of the dream, they can be expressed or imposed in the material life, but in the material world is we are having, it is also real. Dream is also real, but its reality is temporary. Material world is real, but its reality is temporary. So in that context, but the material world has this advantage that we can come out of the dream and modify our situation even in this material world so that we enter the eternal life, not like dream-like or transitory life, again and again. So this material world, swamatrattva prasiddhaya, this material existence is created so that we can modify, we can transcend this material existence through consciousness, and don't become subject to dream-like experience again and again. This material world, the Srishti Leela and Sansar Leela, is designed to cause our connection and entrance to the eternal realm. It should be the eternal experience where the setback of the dream or the discouragement or the negative experience of the dreams are no more there. But what, because these dreams are going to haunt us even when we speak spiritual subject matters, because dreaming experience is so much deep rooted in our consciousness, in our awareness, and that's why the Lord is using this example. But what causes the dream? Anybody? It's nothing but the extension of a Jagrit Avastha. Jagrit Avastha means a wakeful state. It is also compared to mode of goodness. Mode of goodness in the sense that it can be modified, because when a person is in the mode of passion, he is so much carried away by the passion that he just cannot be modified. Mode of ignorance also, it's very difficult. But in Jagrit Avastha, it is compared to mode of goodness. So when we are awake, if somebody educates us about the mode of passion and ignorance, one educates us about even about the dream, and educates us about the nature of this material world compared to dream, and we say, well, I don't want to fall to the, I don't want to be trapped by the dream. I want something permanent, correct? This is asatoma satgama. We are always, as a human being, we are interested. We can be interested only in something permanent that is natural for all of us. So, so if one has protected one's wakeful state, because whatever we think, speak, do, or want to do, crave to do in our wakeful state, but in wakeful state, what happens? We cannot do due to many restrictions, restricted by being conscious of our surrounding. You know, this is the difference between animals; they don't care, but we are talking about the human being. So at the human platform, because we feel restrictions, but in dream state, what happens? We don't face the restrictions. You know? So the things which we restricted in our wakeful state, but we have the craving, so that becomes manifest in a dreaming state. That's why for sadhaka, that during our wakeful state, if we have protected in our thought to think purely devotionally, to speak devotionally, to act devotionally, karmana mansa vacha. From three angles, if we have protected our wakeful state, we have also protected our dreaming state. The vikaras, vikar ko English mein kya kehte, the transformations or the reactions, negative or unwanted, undesired experiences one feels in a swapna or the dreaming state, it is nothing but the extension of wakeful state. We can contemplate on this thing, that the unfulfilled cravings or desires. If we are left with them in dream state, they will find their way to express itself. And in a dream avastha, we have no control. And that's why the Jagrit avastha is superior to dream avastha. Because dreaming state, we have no control. In wakeful state, we can restrict, we can control our emotions and cravings, and at least in action, restrict. But even during wakeful state, if we don't safeguard our consciousness, then that vikrit or unsafeguarded consciousness in the dreaming state, it will find its slippage. Protect and safeguard one's dreaming state also by safeguarding one's wakeful state. Because now Srila Prabhupada is emphasizing that how Mayavadis they fall prey to this the misunderstanding of this Vedic aphorism Tattvamasi. Because basically the knowledge has three aspects described in the Vedas: the knowledge of Tat Purush, the knowledge of Tam Purush, and the so-called knowledge of oneness of the living entity with the Supreme, which is the subject matter of today's presentation. So Tat means something which is unknown to us. So that's why Tat is called Paramatma. Paramatma is unknown thing. Yasmin Vigyate Sarvam Evam Vigyatam Bhavati. If we know Paramatma, then everything else becomes known. That's why Srila Prabhupada once said that self-realization follows God realization. Knowing oneself is not enough unless we first know the supreme position of the Supreme Lord. And that's why Tat Purush, why Paramatma is addressed as Tat, because unknown thing is, Tat means woe. We cannot know. That's why Paramatma's knowledge of Paramatma is Tat Purush. And Tvam Purush is the knowledge about the living entity. And third is this insistence to establish that Jiva Brahma, the living entity, and the Supreme, are one and the same. That what causes the material conditional life of the Mayavadis. But what this the whole idea is the stigma of this misunderstanding. Because why misunderstanding? Because something which it cannot be practicalized, then it is misunderstanding. If something we understand it can be practicalized, then it is not misunderstanding. So Mayavad concept of this Tattvamasi is based in misunderstanding because it cannot be practicalized. Why it is not practicalized? Because whosoever misunderstands misses the point. Misses the point, the real point, and he becomes a representative of other misunderstanders. Because if we look into this Tattvamasi, it is the conclusion of a talk between a father and son in Samaved, in Chandogya Upanishad, where Uddalak is the father, and he is concerned about the arrogance of his son, Nichiketa. He is very proud of his knowledge, and father wants to give him a lesson. You know, sometimes just to embarrass the son, the father has to give such a lofty, you know, just like sarcastically we say, "Oh well, you are the supreme." You know, it's like just to bring him to the senses that why the supreme needs to be reminded that he is the supreme. It is a conclusion of that conversation where the father Uddalak is telling his son that we are in search of the supreme. So one who is in search cannot claim to be the supreme, correct? Oh, I'm in search of God, and one day I realized I am God. This is the most ludicrous ideology of misunderstanding. Can you imagine why God has to be in search of God? Why God needs to be told that he is God? So this very connotation, very message, the very message which Uddalak, the father, wants to give to Chiketa is, okay, Tattvamasi, you are the supreme. This is how Mayavadis take. But our Vaishnava says the message is you are also his. Tat in Sanskrit grammar, the word tat has two meanings. Tat means that, and tat also means in Shashti, Samas. You know, if you think of कर्ता ने फर्स्ट, कर्ता ने कर्म को करण से संप्रदाय के लिए उपादान से संबंध का की के, इन द षष्ठी समास का की के, तो तत् मीन्स उसका, तत् to him you belong, Tattvamasi. So this is very practical, but you are that, you are supreme. This cannot be practicalized, and that's why those who misunderstand it and those who preach this misunderstanding, they become the celebrity. Everybody, every Mayavadi thinks he's a celebrity because he's the supreme, and everybody loves to become the celebrity. But this is the misunderstanding. Everybody identifies with one's misunderstanding to be a celebrity himself, isn't it? It's the easiest or the shortest cut to become a celebrity. Just remember Tattvamasi. This is how ignorance rules. Ignorance wants to find, because it's so difficult otherwise to become a celebrity, correct? But ignorance gives one the shortest cut to at least feel, at least to call oneself a celebrity, Tattvamasi. So this is the biggest drawback described. But Srila Prabhupada, for our benefit, for the benefit of everybody, every Mayavadi or otherwise, Srila Prabhupada is establishing this marginal position of the living entity. when he describes this, Tattvamasi has to be understood from marginal position of the living entity, not from the Supreme's Supreme. Because Supreme is Supreme. Nobody else has the capacity to claim claim to be supreme. So that doesn't stand. That misunderstanding cannot be practicalized. So what is marginal? Marginal means something not so central. It is not the most significant thing. So the living entity, in its marginal position, it cannot take the position of the Supreme. Supreme is always the central focus of the whole existence, everything. The living entity cannot be the center of attention of this existence. So that's why it's called marginal, situated on the side. It can be marginalized because it is so tiny, it is so insignificant within the whole existence. So when a living entity thinks of himself as a supreme and all, it becomes the most ludicrous thing, because it's by very constitutional position, it is marginal. It doesn't hold a central position, importance. It is limited in its extent, limited in its significance, limited in its status, because it is not the mainstream topic of the Vedas or the books of knowledge. The books of knowledge of Vedas describe as the central focus of the Supreme. And all of us who partake into hearing about the Supreme, we realize our marginal position. And that gives us the relevance, because it gives us freedom from any misunderstanding as to who the Supreme, who is the central, who holds the central position. It's very, very important. So our position, if we appreciate, as marginal, but marginal to whom? Marginal to the Supreme. It is not that, we are having a marginal position. Just barely we are surviving. Marginal means barely on the it's not something very significant. So if we appreciate the position of the Supreme, then in relation to him, we will appreciate our marginal position. Otherwise, it's very difficult in the conditional life to be described as marginal. It is very lowly, it is very lowly. But in relation to Krishna, like somebody may be a personal secretary of the Prime Minister, that's a very elevated position, But otherwise, to be a servant is not a very lofty position. But servant of the Supreme becomes a lofty position. So our close to the lower limit, we don't have to worry about it. And that's why Mayavadis, how they deprive themselves, how they by forgetful. What causes their forgetfulness of Krishna? Because they identify too much, or they just ignore. This is how they ignore Krishna's position. They become forgetful of Krishna because they themselves are the Supreme, and others by not seeing their connection to the Supreme. So both are the losers. And this can be very well, with an example, it can be expressed. Just I give an example. In the city of Surat, there is an apartment complex, and its name is Ratna Jyoti. Ratna Jyoti, correct? Ratna Jyoti. Ratna means the jewel, and Jyoti means the light or the glow which comes out of it. And in that complex, there are many Mayavadis, die-hard Mayavadis. So once they arranged a lecture in that apartment building. There were many following that Mayavadi. So I asked this question, you live in this apartment complex, its name is Ratna Jyoti. So I asked them directly the question, do you want the Ratna or you want the Jyoti? I asked them to think very properly and give the answer. And all of them in unison, they say, hey, we want the Jyoti. I say, why are you after Jyoti? If you get the Ratna, if you get the jewel, then you don't have to run after the Jyoti, because Ratna is the source of the Jyoti. That's what Srila Prabhupada establishing, that the sun is not, the sunshine gains its importance because the sun globe. It is not the sun globe is important because of the sunshine. It's the other way around. The sun globe is the source of the sunshine. The sunshine gains its importance because of the sun globe. It is not that the sun globe gains its importance because of the sunshine. Because the sun globe, sun possesses the sunshine. The sunshine does not possess the sun. One is the energy, one is the energetic. So not acknowledging the position of the energetic, one can be lost to the energy. We are ourselves energy. And we can be trapped by this. So Jyoti is also energy. But the sun itself is the energetic. And so that principle must be very much, Srila Prabhupada quotes, Brahmano hi pratishtaham in the purport. So that's where the two aspects of Brahma, because Krishna is also described as Brahma in the scriptures. Param Brahma, Param Dhamam, Pavitram Paramo Bhavan. Arjuna describing Krishna as a glory. So, and the energy of Brahma, the living entity, the material Prakriti, that is also described as Brahma. But Krishna being the energetic Brahma. And the energy of Brahma is the light, Prakash, all of us, the material manifestation. It is also called Brahma. Sarva yonishi konteya murtaya sambhavantyam tasam brahma mahad yoni aham bija pradatita. So this whole expansion of this material creation is also this yoni rupa Brahma. So the whole idea is that the supreme Brahma, that position is held by Krishna. And if we appreciate Krishna as the original or the supreme Brahma, then all other things, living entities and everything which is described as Brahma, they can be appreciated in subordination of the Supreme Brahma. Correct? So the beauty of the Jyoti can be appreciated in subordination, independence of the sun, of the Ratna. Then everything is, everything gains its proper relevance. So this relevance is the most important subject matter to understand this Achintya Bheda Bhed. Otherwise, in the name of Achintya Bheda Bhed, there is a lot of possibilities of misunderstanding. So this Achintya Bheda Bhed philosophy, it gives the proper understanding of our true relevance. Everybody is searching for self-importance, correct? So in this material world, in a material conditional life, because one does not know one's dependence, one's connection to Krishna. Mayavadis, they appreciate so-called connection, but they think that themselves are Brahman, themselves are supreme. That's why their conditional life. So in both kinds, this misunderstanding is prevalent because of the non-realization of one's relevance in relation to Krishna. Krishna is amazingly beautiful, amazingly powerful, all this opulence and everything which we describe. And if we find our description, if we find our swarup, our identity in relation to him, then we don't have to worry about, oh, why Krishna is supreme and I am part of someone so unlimitedly supreme. unlimitedly beautiful, unlimitedly rich, unlimitedly powerful and everything. Would I mind this? No, I won't mind it. And on other side, in utter ignorance, the living entity trying to search out who one is, and he in utter stupidity thinks that he is the supreme. So that's another kind of ignorance. So both kind of ignorance, when one comes out, either one of them, then he gains his proper relevance that I am part of Krishna. Wow. It's just like I'm personal servant of Prime Minister. Very elevated situation. He doesn't have to just, he doesn't have to crazily say that I'm the Prime Minister. No, I'm a servant of the Prime Minister. That makes a big, big thing. Rather than being some servant of somebody. Even nobody in the conditioned state wants to be wants to be titled as servant. Because servant means very low. But I am servant of Krishna. That's a very elevated position. Servant itself is not a very lofty position, but servant of the Supreme, that's a very, very, so when we gain our true relevance in relation to Krishna, we become free from both ignorance, not ignorance of not knowing about our dependence on Krishna, and also ignorance of identifying with Krishna. That way we can protect ourselves and move towards the true transcendence by realizing our transcendental position. We are all very special. However insignificant, however small we are uniquely special. Why? Because we are part and parcel of the supreme special Krishna. What else we need? This vision, this understanding will cause our transcendence, even while apparently situated in this realm of three modes of material nature, because it is the consciousness which has to be purified. It is the consciousness. We define our existence. We define our destination. We define what we are, either in ignorance, because in ignorance also we are defined, we are in ignorance. That is the definition. But if we want to realize our Swarupa, which cannot be violated, then we have to realize this relevance in relation to Krishna and come out of this conditional life which we have been bothered by, which have been subjected to since eternity. So the option is given to all of us, because we have never used our critical option. In human form of life alone, it gains it's a critical position. Free will is critical only in this human form of life, and especially when we join the Hare Krishna. Other people, they are not interested in Hare Krishna. They are not entertaining the thought of attaining the supreme abode of the Lord. Only those who are hankering, even theoretically, even as an idea, even intellectually, entertaining this thought of attaining the supreme abode of the Lord, for them this free will is very critical. Free will is not critical at all in the kingdom of God, nor in the Swarga Loka, nor in the animal kingdom. For those people who are wandering and telling, don't bother us, mind your own business, we are doing fine. So free will is critical only for us sadhakas. And we can acknowledge that we have only misused so far. We have only not used our free will properly. We want to attain that realm where the free will is totally settled, where the free will is not in a critical position, where the situation, where the settlement is permanent. So we have to move out of this asat, where we have lived as if permanently, going in circle, and attain The Sat, Asato Ma Sat Gama hai. So that is our direction. We should never, we must never entertain this thought that Sat in the eternal abode, in the eternal place, we have come from. Because the very life, the settlement is eternal. What is the meaning of eternal? Because those who are there, they are still there. Nobody left, nobody ever left that realm. But we can venture to leave, come out of this realm, which is Asat. Asato ma asat gama. Mrityor ma amritam gama. Tamaso ma jyotirgama. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. So thank you all of us, all the listeners, participants, and Mahatmas and Sadhakas. Please come forward if you want to say anything, something, any comment, addition, and any question. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaji. Thank
Hare
you
Krishna.
for this wonderful lecture. Yeah, so if anyone is having any question regarding today's class, they can raise the hand and ask His Holiness Bhakti Swarup Swami Maharaj. Yeah, Balramji, please.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaji, Dhanvat Pranam. Very nice description. So I have few questions, sir.
Of course.
Yeah. So one by one, about this difference between the ideologies of Mayavadis and Bhagavatas. So what I feel the fundamental difference could be let's say when we think about the moksha, the Mayavadis say the mind, intelligence, ego, etc., whatever the covering the soul has, that is removed and they merge with Brahman. But Bhagavatas, they think the soul is the eternal servant of God, Krishna, and that's why the mind, intelligence, ego, etc., are purified, and they are still there. That's why, I mean, they can think of the servant of as servant of God. So this difference could be there. That's why they are thinking that they merge with Brahman, but the Bhagavatas, they think they are servant of Lord Krishna always. So is it?
Yeah, this idea of moksha is ignorance. In Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, chapter 14, text number 26, where Lord Brahma is establishing this Siddhanta. He says, Ajnana Sanghyo Bhavabandha Mokshau Dvau Nama Chanyau, like that. So he's describing moksha from what? And bandhan with what? Forgetting one's constitutional position, these ideologies of ignorance, two aspects. To think that I am in bondage is also ignorant. And to contemplate or to think that, oh, because I am in bondage, I want to become liberated. These are all two aspects of ignorance due to the lack of proper knowledge of one's constitutional position, one's relation. So not acknowledging that we are part of Krishna. The Mayavadis think to become one with the Supreme, rather than becoming his, rather than becoming supremes, they want to become supreme. So that is moksha. That's why the Tattvamasi is misunderstood. Why the misunderstanding? Because it is not practicalized. Why the Supreme has to struggle to become supreme? You know, the idea of moksha is to become one with the Supreme, to become the Supreme. So that is the most ludicrous thing in ignorance. And those who think in bondage, those who suffer, first the idea is of bondage, that I am in bondage, because they think they are different from the Supreme Lord. Different means they exist differently, rather than accepting their dependence on the Supreme. If they accept the dependence, then the idea of bondage and idea of moksha, they both will disappear.
Yeah, and when they think that they, let's say, even if they say that they are merging with Lord, that automatically means that they are smaller, quantitatively much smaller than Lord himself. So this qualitative oneness and quantitative, let's say, smallness is automatically, I mean, evident. So, I mean,
Yes.
yeah. So I think it is the problem of their misunderstanding of the Vedic, let's say, the lines that those are given. Let's say all the Mahavakyas of Vedas. Those have no problem. Those are qualitatively correct, but quantitatively that's not correct. That's what.
That's why they are not practicalized. They cannot be practicalized. Like one person, suppose calls you, and he is very much struck with Tattvamasi, and he asks you that I want to talk to you. So then you can say, well, you want to talk to whom? You are once in Ujjain, when there was a Kumbh Mela, there was one camp of some Mayavadi where it was very in big letters. You and I are not two, but one. So if one person wants to talk to the other person, then who is talking to whom? If they are one, if the one person talks to oneself, it is described what, lunatic, correct? So that is lunatic actually. So Mayavadis are lunatics because they say you and I are not two but one, but practically they act in duality. And those who want to do away with this worldly exchange, if they just keep on saying Shivoham, Shivoham, Aham Brahmasmi, Aham Brahmasmi, it's like speaking to oneself. They are not speaking to. So there is no exchange, there is no practical transaction between them. So that's why it is,
this problem can be solved if one understands the difference between, let's say, Brahma and Param Brahma. If they say Aham Brahmasmi, maybe they forget that there is Param Brahma.
who will remind them? They are very covetedly convinced, covetedly stuck in their ignorance, you know. So it's folly to preach where ignorance is bliss. All right? We have many more souls to be enlightened. They are waiting.
Yes. So I just have one small question. So
Yes.
when we say Asatoma Sadgamaya, so I mean, you explained it very nicely. So this means we want to go from the unconscious dream state towards the conscious wakeful state. So this is
dream state is not unconscious.
This is
dream state is also,
because this is in the Rajoguna. This will be a little bit unconscious than the Satoguna, the wakeful state.
Yes. No. What I meant to say unconscious, knowingly, unknowingly. So in dreaming state, that option is not there because you are not restricted by the surrounding. You are totally captured, and what was restricted in your wakeful state, now it is no more restricted. You go full-fledged, you know, you full force. You just experience whatever you wanted or whatever you crave to experience in a dreaming state.
Yes, Maharaj. So, but the question I have is whether it's should be considered only materially, let's say, going from dream state to the wakeful state, or spiritually also we can use that.
Well, the whole idea is dream